Hey guys, it's Mathel here once again, and today I wanted to share a meme creation that actually kind of worked for some reason, and that is revisiting Winter Orb for my second time ever with Sire of Shards as a Trickster using Eternity Shroud, just trying to get a bit of extra damage boost in as the cold to fire conversion with all of that extra chaos goodness. The idea was to kind of meme it up with a Sire of Shards and see how well that worked, and essentially you can see that it just shoots out all of these Winter Orb projectiles in all directions at the same time with the Sire of Shards, rather than target one big sploosh into a single area at a time like Winter Orb classically does. At the same time, you should notice I've also got Cast While Channel Ice Spear in the same setup, and it doesn't really do too much, but it does shoot out further, giving you a bit more range, and then for the single target it should help out damage a bit as well. But the main idea here is that it just worked a lot better than ever expected when standing on the inside of a boss. I thought while doing all of this sort of stuff, it was just kind of a pile of memes, it looked pretty stupid, and at the same time it cleared not too bad. Turns out you can actually have single target damage as well, because the idea was that I'd have a Sire of Shards in my main hand, and then in an offhand weapon swap I'd have a real staff with a real cast or channel setup, so that DPS could be easily swapped from single target to area. But ever since putting on the Sire of Shards, if you stand like well inside of a boss, it does actually all target together onto the boss's feet and hit everything at once with all of the projectiles. And Sire of Shards actually adds 4 additional projectiles as well to your Winter Orb and your Ice Spear, and with that it should actually still potentially be a competitive DPS increase to a regular staff that won't shoot things in and over. The catch, of course, is how many of those projectiles are actually going to hit, and against a lot of enemies it actually does work out rather well. I don't have much example of actual bosses yet, since I'm still only just leveling through the 80s, and I'm just now starting to tackle some of my endgame content, but you can see just a few little clips here or there of some of the shitty bosses that we've done, and it does somehow shred much more than I ever expected it to. So this is a Winter Orb for the second time around. The first time I did it was when it was slightly nerfed already, I think, but it was still pretty busted OP. The big change that they made to it is that the frequency at which the projectiles shoot out is lower just by default while running, so it's not going to auto snipe things all of the time and become this god tier OP skill. Instead, the frequency becomes quite a lot better when you're standing still and channeling. So I think in a lot of situations Winter Orb doesn't feel any worse, doesn't really feel nerfed at all. It's just that it's not going to be sniping everything across the entire map if you're just zooming around. That said, I think with an explosion chest and some explosion chest scaling, Winter Orb will still do that, so I don't really see an issue with Winter Orb at all. If you want to do this build without an Eternity Shroud and instead do an explosion chest scaling pure cold, it might even be the superior version of the build, because you'll be freezing everything, you'll be scaling pure cold, not having to worry about any silly conversions, and then explosion chest will shit on the entire screen, as it typically does. But you can't just stick one of those in every build, can you? Because, I don't know, it's a bit much, right? But if there's a league to do it, it is this one, since that would be extremely easy to get a rather good one happening. This is a Trickster as well. As you can see, I do have power charges, frenzy charges, and I am running Eldritch Battery, Mind Over Matter, so I do have 4,500 life or so, as well as that the energy shield to take a few extra hits with the ghost shrouds, and on top of that the character is actually capped on block. So with staves we do when we crit have 75 block for attacks, and I think something like 50 spell block, I'm not quite sure. That is with glancing blows though, so it's not 100% effective block, but it does make things a lot more manageable. Up to like level 90 or so, I think I only died once, and that was to a pretty silly delirium sort of situation, and some reflect issues, but it wasn't actually anything to do with the character. It has been a very thick and solid character so far, because nothing really hits us, and if it does, it gets mitigated quite hard, and if it doesn't, then things die really, really quickly anyway, and it's not something to particularly worry about. So for some reason, it's actually turned into quite a thick character, something that survives really well and somehow has damage as well, with the Eternity Shroud potentially being the backbone of that, but as well as that, the Sire of Shards, just an absolute pleasantly surprising interaction here. And you can also see that I have some totems for just regular Winter Orb. Not quite sure if it's Winter Orb or Ice Spear that I want on my totems, but I've currently gone with Winter Orb, and that helps our single target a bit as well. So we'll find out in the next day or two just how thick the single target can be, and if it's going to be pretty damn good. If I can actually kill Conquerors and Guardians and stuff rather efficiently with this sort of build, it's definitely one I will revisit in future leagues as a just pure cold variant, maybe Assassin, maybe Inquisitor, stuff like that, and that could be a staple in my sort of setup because it's a lot of fun and not that gear intensive. So let's get into how I've built it so far. So here is our current character, level 90 now, called Celestial Sprinkler, and that is pretty much entirely just because Winter Orb with the Sire of Shards and also the whole shaped set as well as the Celestial Winter Orb effect does look kind of Celestial Sprinkler-like. So as I mentioned, the build is kind of revolving around Sire of Shards. So it has socketed gems fire 4 additional projectiles and then they fire in a circle. So it's only going to affect the things inside the staff. Thus our main setup here is affected and turns things into a Nova. Now traditionally you get Winter Orb and then some additional projectiles, and every time Winter Orb shoots out like 5 projectiles, if all 5 of those hit, they end up doing damage from each of those projectiles. So with our current Winter Orb, it has 9 projectiles when it fires out into a circle, but it'll overlap and hit one single enemy if it's close enough or the hitbox of the boss is large enough. So it doesn't happen on everything, but on quite a lot we do actually get all of those proj hitting, and it ends up hitting quite hard. Likewise with Ice Spear, same sort of interaction. Each additional projectile will actually be hitting and sort of contributing to the single target too. Now you can see we are also basing our build off of Eternity Shroud. Hits ignore enemy chaos resist if all equipped items are shaper items, so it's pretty important to get your last few pieces in shaped as well, which is why we have chanced ourselves a Pyre and chanced ourselves a Sire of Shards. But to begin with, it's 5% of LE damage as extra chaos per item equipped, which explains why we are doing cold to fire conversion, because the extra LE as chaos will be based off of the original fire and also off of the original cold and also off of the resulting fire. So you get 5% off of all of your original cold damage and then 5% off of your current fire damage. So you can see that almost half of my damage at the moment is entirely from Eternity Shroud and just Chaos, and if we press the Theory Flask, it is roughly equal to Fire and Chaos damage. That said, because I don't have much fire penetration or like minus fire resist, my fire isn't anywhere near as good as if you just built like a pure cold version and had some cold pen and stuff like that. So it's not that efficient. I'm not too sure about building it this way. I haven't really run the numbers, but I have a feeling that just a regular Winter Orb with pure cold scaling will go pretty far as well. And if you want, chuck in some Assassin for Omega damage, maybe some Inquisitor, something like that. And quite likely, you don't need any of this shit to be shaped, and you can just build a thicker character. But currently, it's not very hard to get shaped gear and also decent stuff with Harvest. Sire of Shards took me maybe 600 chance orbs. It's not that hard to chance. The Pyre should be a lot harder. I think it took me about 2,000 chance orbs. But you could also end up hitting Dream Fragments, and it might be a bit of a crapshoot that way. So take that for what you will. It's not necessarily that worth doing. Even converting this way, as you can see, it's not the biggest deal in average damage, 12k to 14k if you just use a regular thick ring, but at the same time it does put all of our damage into fire so that we can also just focus purely on a little bit of fire penetration. And the way I'm doing that is getting a Wave of Conviction over here. So Arcanist Brand, Wave of Conviction, and Combustion. So when we ignite, we give him minus fire, and also Wave of Conviction itself will give minus fire as an exposure. So our current setup is to actually put down 3 totems. Now that is from our Winter Orb setup over here. So Winter Orb with all this crap, Cold to Fire, and totems, and then drop some Arcanist Brands on there, and then stand inside the boss ourselves and do lots of good damage. It can be a bit of a risky strategy for some things because, you know, bosses sometimes will do bad stuff to you if you're right next to them. But like I said, about 4,500 life so far, almost 2k ES with Eldritch Battery and Mind Over Matter. And then on top of that, capped block when we've actually crit. So our block right now is 70%. Once I've crit, thanks to this thing, it does go up to 75. So we're kind of thick in that regard. Do have some evasion, do have some good Trickster stuff going on as well. So all in all, it's kind of thick. At least it has not been a challenge at all so far, surviving any encounters. And I've also got my Chaos Res up quite high too. With its Eerie Flask, we're actually capped on Chaos as well. So to go over the current links and stuff, we do have Winter Orb attached to Cast While Channel, Ice Spear, then GMP, Energy Leech, and Cold to Fire. Now it's kind of debatable if you even need the Ice Spear in this setup. You could just go pure Winter Orb, but I've liked it. I've tested it with and without, and I think it just adds a little bit of extra clusterfuck to make it a bit more enjoyable. But you can go pure Winter Orb, but I think for Cast While Channel, when you're actually like doing single target, it's probably an increase to have some Ice Spear. And it's potentially still an increase to have a pure 6-link weapon swap or a better staff that is also shaped. In this setup, we have Spell Totem, Multi-Totem, Winter Orb, Infused Channel, GMP, and Cold to Fire. Totems don't currently get infusion, so I might actually swap this to Ellie Focus in the end, just for a bit more damage, but only just figured that out somewhat recently. We then have Combustion, Wave of Conviction, and Arcanist Brand attached to Faster Casting. I will put an Onslaught gem in here as well. We got some shaped boots that you can easily make yourself that do Hatred, Zealotry, and Summon Stone Golem. So that's my reservation, Hatred and Zealotry. And then up here is Second Wind, Flame Dash, Discipline, and Righteous Fire, which is just Vile Righteous Fire. So we travel most of the time with a Flame Dash. It's possible that Lightning Warp is better, but I have yet to test it since I've been more or less okay with my Flame Dash for the time being. As far as the gear is concerned, it's pretty much just regular freaking gear that is shaped. Nothing really too crazy. Made this myself. I think I made everything myself, but made the belt by just influencing a Stygian belt. Got Shaper as one of the outcomes. Cast speed on gloves. An Assassin Mark ring with a bit of life gain on hit. Chanced that crap. Bought an amulet that had crit multi and a little bit of Ellie Pen. Slammed on cast speed since it's the only suffix that can happen with Augment Caster. Put on some life. Boots, you basically just start with some movement speed through alterations and then put on whatever the hell you want through harvest crafting. It's actually kind of ridiculous. And that's about it, right? We do also have an Abyssal Jewel in there that you can make very easily yourself as well. Life, and then the only 2 suffixes that are caster based are Onslaught and Cast Speed. So shit, that's easy too. The passive tree itself just goes over as pretty regular passive tree for sort of spell casting with staves. You go around, grab some life, grab some crit multi, get Eldritch Battery, get Mind Over Matter. We do have a Watcher's Eye that does both cold damage for Hatred and an Arcane Surge for Zealotry. This thing costs like 100C because no one really cares about these. No Cluster Jewel, though it might be possible that it's best to do one. I'll still look into that. And then some staff crap, gets you some block, gets you some glancing blows, and crit multi with some cast speed sort of little jewels, which can kind of tailor yourself and craft a little bit. But one of these I think I bought, one of these I bought and sort of tinkered with a little. And that's pretty much it. We then also use a Dying Sun, though you could use a Cinder Swallow because that's going to be really good for life on kill, ES on kill. But currently I think this is my Flask setup and I don't have any freeze protection. That's why I'm trying to get a bit of ailment avoidance there, a bit of ailment avoidance there if I can put the life on and then craft the avoidance myself. And hopefully freeze kind of takes care of itself. So far hasn't really been an issue. It's only an issue for boxes anyway, right? Oh man, I'm getting lightheaded. Hopefully that's all I need to say about the character so far. We'll see how it is for single target, but it's done up to like tier 14 or 15 maps pretty comfortably, pretty easily, and the boss damage there has been okay. I think the biggest hurdle will be bosses that run around and sort of get out of your zone of death at their feet. But if that happens, I could easily just try and craft a Shaper Staff and then see if that fixes my single target just by having to swap from one to the other. For now guys, thank you very much for watching and see you next time.